Good morning. It's our town. It's 9 a.m. on a Thursday morning, and we bring you interesting people, interesting topics, interesting guests. That's what we do each and every week here on 94.9 and 99.1 The River. My name is Darren Swinson, the host of the program. Our town, as always, brought to you by Decorah Bank and Trust. A little later on in the program, we'll talk with new Decorah High School football coach Mike Tangen. We will also talk to Decorah School Superintendent Tim Cronin. We'll talk to Decorah City Manager Travis Goedken. But first things first, we'll talk about the subject of April being Sexual Abuse Awareness Month. We'll have a conversation with Mandy Groth from the Decorah Police Department and Fallon Cassidy from the Winneshiek County Sheriff's Office. That conversation is coming up now to start the Our Town program. It's brought to you by Decorah Bank and Trust, and you're listening to it on 94.9 and 99.1 The River. The month of April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and here to talk about the issue is Mandy Groth from the Decorah Police Department and Fallon Cassidy from the Winneshiek County Sheriff's Office. And Mandy, will start with this, and I always usually try to start these conversations with a definition of sexual abuse, because so often we talk about issues and we don't clearly define what those issues are. What is the maybe perhaps even broad definition of sexual abuse?
Yeah, well, I think you can summarize it in lots of different definitions. But a broad definition would be any type of sexual contact, physical contact that is unwanted by the other person.
And Fallon, how often here locally does law enforcement deal with these type of cases?
So to be honest, it probably happens a lot more than people think. Even in our small and close-knit communities, like it is happening. And the thing that we really want to promote is for people to really kind of take notice of this stuff. If they're seeing some red flags pop up, things like that, to just be more aware of this stuff and work on ways to prevent it. And like Mandy talked about, we kind of have a victim-based approach on everything. And I think that awareness is really going to be the biggest thing for our area, to get people kind of aware and to know the resources and ways to prevent this from continuing to happen in our area.
And Mandy, what are some of the resources available to those that are dealing with these type of horrible situations?
Yes, it can start very locally, like, in the school systems, going to a counselor. They can help navigate that. Here in Winneshiek County, we do have what's called SART, which is a Sexual Assault Response Team. So that's made up of many different areas within the community. So law enforcement is on that. And then advocacy program through Riverview Center is also part of that. The prosecution office is also part of that as well. And then also SANES, and which SANES are sexual assault nurses. They're trained nurses that can do the sexual assault kits. But locally, the main resource is Riverview Center. They are the ones who handle all sexual assault cases, sex abuse cases. That's a free resource. They also provide advocates. Advocates can play a very key role in helping victims navigate. Usually they're in a very trauma state. They may have a lot of questions, not sure where to go with those questions. The advocate can help them navigate through there. The advocate has tons of resources, can go with them to get a sexual assault kit done if that's what's needing to be done, can help them through no contact orders, civil arrangements, different areas like that.
And Fallon, reality is people that deal with these types of situations, there's a stigma attached to them. How do we get over collectively as a society that stigma that you shouldn't have to deal with situations like this? There is help out there for those that are dealing with it.
Yeah, so yeah, I think that's a good point that you bring up. That's one of the main reasons I would say why a lot of victims don't come in and kind of report to law enforcement or even to outside friends and family, because they're worried that they might be blamed for the situation or that it might be their fault, which of course is never the case. It's always the abuser, it's always on them. And that's kind of one thing that the Riverview Center has really picked up on and been really good about. They promote a lot of campaigns. They also go to schools, they go to colleges, they will speak at community centers about, like I had mentioned before, being more aware of this instance. Like if somebody sees something at work, maybe talk to the person, report it to somebody is really going to be the big thing. So that's kind of one thing that I'm glad is going around the community, the Riverview Center promoting all of these talks and opening up this communication to realize that it's never the victim's fault. We need to be more aware of these instances, and getting involved with those kind of campaigns is definitely something that the community needs to continue to do.
And Mandy, when it comes to situations like this, are most of the victims victimized by people that they know?
Yes, I think, back how many years ago, you used to, be told, be scared of the person who's going to jump out of the bushes at you. And rarely that's not the case. I mean, I think society is doing a much better job of educating people that I think it's upwards 90% of the victims know they're offenders. It's somebody that is close to them. It can start out as a grooming situation that an offender picks a victim at a young age and starts grooming that person. Or it can be somebody who is a roommate or somebody who you go to school with. So yes, 90% of the time, the victims are going to know who their offenders are.
And Fallon, when it comes to being victimized by somebody you know, does that create a challenge for the victim in reporting these cases?
Definitely, yes. A lot of times, for instance, maybe it's a spouse. They might be a huge control of like money. For instance, people are worried, oh no, I really don't have anywhere else to go. This is a huge place of my income. Sometimes they have kids together, and that will lead to a whole another issue. They really don't want to break up families for kids being involved. Or in other cases, I mean, there's just kind of all of those reasons that make people really hesitant to bring this up to law enforcement, which is one thing that actually the Riverview Center does try to help out with a little bit. They actually have access to what they call just basic needs resources. They can try to get somebody relocated for a time, help them out with some, food items, clothes for kids, things like that. They're the basic necessities to make it possible for these victims and these survivors to kind of get out of those situations without having those additional concerns.
And Mandy, when it comes to these situations, when law enforcement does get involved, what is the specific role of law enforcement and how do you branch out to let the victims know of these resources?
Yeah, so specific role of law enforcement, this type of a crime with sexual assault abuse is really a victim-led reporting process. So the victim really can decide how much they want to report or how little. If they just want to have a sexual assault kit done and have nothing else go forward with it, that's their right to do that. They can come and report to us, and just because they report to us doesn't mean that we have to go forward with the investigation. It's 100% victim-led. So then once they do come to us, or if they choose to come with us, we ask that we can get an advocate called for them, get them in contact with Riverview, and we'll wait to do the interview with them until that person is there so that they don't have to keep repeating over and over again what happened. So we really do try to all work together. And at the end, we ask them what are their needs, what are their fears, and we can get them connected with resources that we know. If they've allowed that advocate to be there, that advocate will really help navigate them through all of that with a lot of follow-up. They really are kind of just a neutral third party to hold their hand through this process because it can be really overwhelming.
And Fallon, how important is that victim-led process? Because sometimes I'd imagine when you call law enforcement, you think prosecution, jail time, etc., will get involved, and maybe a victim has a little bit of guilt in taking it that far. How important is it that you have this process to, most importantly, get them the help that they need more than anything?
Yes, so yeah, that's a very good point. And I do know that there's been statistics that the Riverview Center has talked about how this victim-based approach that we use has really led to more victims coming and reporting to law enforcement, which of course is a great thing, so we can get them the help and get them out of that situation, and figure out ways to get them resources. So yes, that's definitely a concern. And the main thing would be that, just like Mandy had kind of talked about, we really try to open up that avenue of communication between all the aspects involved with SART, with the sexual assault response team, so that we don't keep like re-traumatizing the victim through this process. And the advocates really help them through. They will talk about, hey, if you do decide to press charges in these instances, you know, this is kind of the route that we'll go. We help them through that. We give them that option. We give them that power to make that decision themselves so that they feel comfortable enough that they believe they can really go through with it. Or if they really just want to kind of hold it back, which does happen at times, and maybe not go the prosecution route, at least they're reporting it, and we can probably still get them some resources. So at least it kind of makes them aware that we try to be their friends. We try to help them through this process as much as we can.
And Mandy, oftentimes our business asks you about statistics related to sexual abuse, but obviously one is too many when it comes to this situation. But if statistics sometimes are rising in a certain crime statistic like this, is that maybe a sign that people are more willing to come forward than they perhaps were 10, 15 years ago?
Yes, absolutely. I know statistics are a little bit rising. Most of the time when people talk about this, they feel like a female is the victim, but males are equally as victimized, just not as forthcoming to come forward that they are a victim. And we're seeing some of those statistics balance out a little bit. Still, it's heavily on the female side, but we are seeing some more males coming forward. And absolutely, when crimes like this, when your statistics get a little bit higher, it is because people are reporting them. This is a crime that's not heavily reported. So to see statistics go up would be a great thing.
And Fallon, oftentimes, especially related to females, there's a lot of conversation of how to protect yourself in situations that could create, where these incidents happen. But at the same time, it's never the victim's fault while doing that. Where's that fine line between making sure you're safe in your surroundings, but at the same time, if something happens, you don't put the blame on yourself?
Yeah, so that's really the biggest kind of internal struggle. And I mean, with external pressures, of course, going around. Yes, I mean, it's always good to have some, you know, personal safety awareness. I mean, at any time it's always going to be a good thing to an extent, but obviously we want to make sure that it's not all on that individual. I mean, this is got to be prevented at the beginning before things happen rather than during the assault, for instance. So yes, I would say definitely, I mean, getting the community more aware of these issues going on, more people report red flags that they're seeing, whether it's at work, at school, with their friends, and potential domestic relationships. Just really being aware of those red flags and talking about how opening up those more conversations about, no, this is not the victim's fault. This should never fall on the victim. It's always going to be the abuser. And we need to get that awareness out there more.
Mandy, anything we need to add? Anything that we haven't covered yet in this conversation?
No, I think we've covered quite a bit. I think the main thing is to know that we do have a lot of resources here in the community, and this is a victim-led crime. So just because you're reporting it doesn't mean that it has to go through to prosecution. It just means that we're here to help them through the traumatic experience, get them the resources, and to let them know what the options are to move forward with it.
And Fallon, anything you would like to add as we wrap up our conversation?
No, I don't think so. I think we kind of hit on really most of the important parts to talk about here today. And like you said, I mean, that's really kind of the narrative that we almost need to get changed, as, you know, this is never on the victim. It's always on the abuser.
All right, Mandy Groth from the Decorah Police Department, Fallon Cassidy from the Winneshiek County Sheriff's Office. We thank you for the conversation and the time here this morning. And thank you, most importantly, for what you guys do to keep our community safe.
You're welcome. Thank you, Darren.
Mandy Groth, Fallon Cassidy from local law enforcement, talking about April being Sexual Abuse Awareness Month. Having our monthly conversation with Decorah City Manager Travis Goedken, and a lot of things to get to based on this week's City Council meeting, 2.5 hour meeting this week, but a lot of things to take care of. And deal with from a city perspective. First thing I'll ask you about, Travis, there was a lot of discussion about a Cops and Rotters charity event coming up here next month. Tell us what the resolution to that issue was.
Absolutely, Darren. So there was quite a bit of discussion to start off our council meeting around that event, which is hosted by the Elks Club here locally that benefits the Decorah Police Department and the Canine program. And lots of good conversation ultimately resulted in a compromise between two parties. And imagine that, a compromise at a government level. How does that work? So the event will now be held the weekend prior to commencement. And that was the big concern, that as requested, it was going to be on the Saturday of both high school and Luther commencement. It will now instead be the Saturday before that and kick off National Police Week as opposed to end on National Police Week.
And you also had a public hearing about the budget. With the new state laws that are required and the public hearings that are required for the state budget, or the city budget in this case, are we done with the public hearings? Are the 6 layers of the budget process now complete?
Oh, you feel my pain there, Darren. Yes. So we went through all the process, had nobody speak at the property tax hearing, had nobody speak at the budget adoption hearing. And ultimately, yes, council was able to adopt the budget roughly, let's see, probably 5 months after beginning the budget process. So we're finally there.
And when it comes to the city's portion of your property taxes, how will the next fiscal year compare to this fiscal year?
So the cities will be an overall decrease in the levy rate, a little over 12 cents decrease on the levy there. And I know a lot of people are going to say, but my valuation, even taking into consider valuation, because Iowa property tax law has, and please stay awake for me for a little bit through this, but Iowa property tax law has a assessment limiter factor, or what a lot of us call the rollback. So once the rollback is applied to your assessed value, you get your taxable valuation, which did not increase by 20%. So that taxable increase coupled with the decrease in the overall levy still results in a decrease in raw tax dollars.
And related to the valuation, that is something that is set really by the state more than anything, correct?
Correct. If the local assessors do not keep in line with market trends, I believe the threshold is 5% above or below market rates in what they are seeing for recent sales, the state will step in and say, all right, assessor, we're going to set those assessed values as well.
And another topic of discussion on Monday night was the Carlson Park Gateway Trail project. What was the discussion on that front?
Discussion was pretty limited on that. Unfortunately, the city only received one bid from a contractor based out of Georgia, and that bid was 70% over the engineer's estimate. So the estimate of $200,000 with a base bid of $340,000 with a alternate of an additional $36,000, pushing that to 88% of the estimate as well as our budget. Unfortunately, with only that one bid, not able to recommend award, and council ultimately did not award the project. We're looking at the staff level of things that we can change in the way the project was bid, whether it's extending the construction period, which will most certainly be one of the changes made. And the other being the way it was bid was total linear feet of the mountain biking trail and did not break out individual features. We'll further itemize that bid package so that way we can see where contractors are putting those costs and possibly still award and reverse engineer takeout, whether it's features or shorten the trail, as opposed to just flat out rejecting.
As we have talked about before on this program, the city is going through some maybe reclassification, redesignations with some city positions, such as the hiring of a new city engineer. There were some things that got thrown on the engineer's plate that probably engineers aren't used to. And I know you've been examining that for a while now. Related to that, there is a personnel pay plan that was discussed on Monday night. What was the resolution regarding that?
Yes, so we have gone through some restructuring with the recent departure of Jeremy Brill, our city engineer. We were given enough notice that we could take a step back and look at the overall operations within the city, and that stemmed back to as far as January. As you said, there's been a slew of personnel adjustments as a result. Nobody leaving because of the reorganization. I'm trying not to take it personal that way anyway. We also had a recent retirement announcement of our Parks and Recreation Director, Andy Nimrod, so that position as well trying to be filled. But the personnel pay plan approved Monday night was to establish the salary range for that Public Works Director position that was recently created, pulling off some of those responsibilities from what was previously the city engineer / street superintendent. We took some of those responsibilities, some of the responsibilities from the existing water superintendent, the existing wastewater treatment plant superintendent, as well as we have our assistant street superintendent, Cole Milligan, who has decided to pursue a completely different career path. And so he'll be leaving as well. Through this reorganization, we've created a public works director position, and all those superintendent positions, 2 of them have assistant roles, and the other at the wastewater treatment plant, we have other staff positions that we do not intend to fill once those positions are vacated through attrition. And we're actually already 2/3 of the way there at this point with some of our recent changes. As a result of that adoption and this change, we will save over $100,000 every year on personnel costs.
You bring up the retirement of Andy Nimrod. He'll be stepping down from the Parks and Recreation position here at the end of the month. And from what I understand, listening to the discussion on Monday night, was the code kind of says 2 things when you're trying to fill that position. What direction do you suggest that the city go when regarding the filling of the position of Parks and Recreation Director?
You're right, Darren. That was the rationale for putting that discussion item on the agenda. City code says that the Parks and Recreation Director is a direct report of and appointed by the city manager. And then later in that same code chapter says that the city manager shall make that appointment with input from the council and the Parks and Recreation, Board of Park Commissioners. And so I asked council for clarification on that matter. How do they see it happening? In talking with Andy, when he interviewed for the position, there were 15 people that conducted his interview. We're not doing that. Nobody interviews with 15 people for a position. And so general consensus was the Parks and Recreation Director has to work with a lot of people, whether it's the city manager trying to make sure we're achieving council's goals and priorities, as well as the city clerk finance officer on maintaining the budget and making sure we're staying within our own financial constraints, as well as our recently created and recently filled. I failed to acknowledge that Mike O'Hara has accepted the position of Public Works Director, and so we're grateful to have him in that role. And there'll be a lot of collaboration between that position as well as the Parks and Recreation Director as well. So those 3 staff positions, as well as the mayor and the chair of the park board, will serve as an interview committee of 5 and help me make a decision on who to appoint to that Parks and Recreation Director position.
And what type of time frame are you on to fill that spot?
I do have the position advertised currently with first review of applications on April 30th. And then hoping to have those interviews scheduled for May 9th and 10th.
And basically, I'd imagine since the city budget has been approved, there isn't the immediate need to fill that position as if there was some more maybe budget questions that were in the air as of this time. Is that that's an outside looking in opinion? Is that am I off my rocker?
Yes, you're off your rocker. No, no, Darren, I can certainly see and understand that. And, but from an operational standpoint, there are a few key things identified, or excuse me, approved in our fiscal 25 budget that we need to get started on right away. And the big one being Dalen property, that's construction of ball fields. We included in our budget the construction of pickleball courts, which also includes for both a revenue side. So we'll be launching a fundraising campaign to help make those projects happen so that the burden isn't solely on property tax base. And even if the council did want to go that route and make it a property tax funded project, that would require us to borrow to finance the project. And for ball fields and pickleball courts, that's a referendum. Whole slew of things that we've got coming up within the Parks Department that the sooner I get that position filled, the better, so that I'm not the one having to try and do that along with my day-to-day.
Fair enough. Where are the pickleball courts that the city is proposing? Where are they going to be?
For anyone not watching, I had to take a drink of coffee and think for a second. That is still trying to be determined.
Okay.
There's a couple of options that are out there. We want to be cognizant of all the areas that are being considered. Certainly plenty of pickleball enthusiasts out there, and others that would be concerned if it's located in or around their neighborhood. So we're just weighing all our spots very carefully at this point.
Few more ordinance discussions which took place this week. One regarding the yard waste disposal for the Decorah Municipal Code. First reading of that ordinance. What does that entail?
Yeah, for most people, Darren, that's not going to have any real impact. Out at our yard waste site, we're starting to meet some area constraints. There was a recent change actually during COVID timeline where city removed a requirement that all contractors chip limbs and brush that they bring in and deposit on the site. Based on our physical constraints within the site and launch of including food waste and our compost grant that we've received, we are going to go back to requiring contractors to chip everything less than 8 inches in diameter.
All right, and couple of ordinances that some may say kind of fit together, and maybe they're a little bit mutually exclusive, but one regarding liquor and intoxication of the municipal code, another regarding special events in the municipal code. Where did those discussions go?
Yeah, a lot of overlap there, Darren, as you point out. So on the liquor and intoxication, we'll start there. That is the code section title. That's why it's phrased that way. But the best example I can give is Nordic Fest. Right now, the beer garden area is on Water Street. That is actually prohibited by our code, does not allow for the possession of an open container nor consumption of beer or wine on a public street or public property. No exceptions listed in code. So all that proposed changing includes is unless otherwise authorized by resolution of the council. So individual considerations can be made, whether it's a Nordic Fest or maybe a similar community festival type event. It is not a free for all. It will have defined areas. The example was given. So if I buy or not even if I buy, but if I'm carrying an open container as I'm walking to Nordic Fest while this has been authorized, is that okay? No, it'll be within a defined area as well.
And one discussing dogs, the control and licensing of dogs. Where did that discussion go?
Yeah, so there was a work session on March 25th where council discussed a lot of these code sections and different changes wanted to implement with the dogs. And this is we'll call it a leash law light that does remove the component that current code reads a dog is under control and not deemed at large if it is at heel next to its owner and obedient to verbal commands. It removes that component and says it's also considered not at large if it has an electronic restraint device, so an electronic leash within range of the device. So I can't throw an electronic collar on my dog and have it 200 feet in front of me at Palisades and be compliant that way either. So leash law light is the best way I can describe it.
And one thing I guess I didn't know until the discussion on Monday night, Decorah is one of few cities around that actually has a publicly elected Parks and Recreation Board. A lot of cities have appointed Parks and Recreation commissioners. That discussion took place on Monday night. I don't think there was any hardcore resolution to that, but what was the point of bringing that up at Monday night's meeting?
Mm-hmm. So that was kind of a spin-off of that same discussion on the clarification that I needed for the interview process with the park board. And it's been kicked around before a couple of times in the past. And yes, Decorah is one of the few that still remain with an elected park board because you can't, state law doesn't allow for that park board commission or parks commission to be elected at this point. I think that change was made back in the 70s. And so this is just a leftover from that. You know, there are some considerations as to why maybe appointed versus elected. Running for elected office can be a bit of a daunting task for some. And so this might open up some opportunities for people that might be willing to serve in an appointed capacity, but not willing to take out election papers. And it just might open up more interest in people's willingness to serve.
And the one thing I'll bring up, because you brought up my name in the point of this discussion on Monday night, is the city's GroupCast communication tool. Tell us what is available, how people sign up for this, and is the city going to continue this?
Yeah, so I don't want to advertise it too hard because the ultimate resolution of the wasn't adopted, but just the general consensus of council was, you know, I believe it's on average $10 to $15 per person we're paying for direct text messages to be sent out to residents. We currently only have 147 subscribers, I believe, and it's costing us over $2,100 on an annual basis to maintain this. So we're going to explore other options that might be cheaper. Unfortunately, this is one of the cheaper direct text messaging programs. That's why we went with GroupCast. And what we've used it for primarily in the past is notifications for snow emergencies, you know, when winter parking ordinances are in effect. When we have street closures, we announce through there. Other pertinent press release information that we push out directly to residents.
That's the end of my Microsoft Word document. Anything left on yours?
No, Darren, I think we covered a 2.5-hour council meeting pretty well here. And, you know, I wish I could tell you the next meeting's going to run faster. You know, it should run a little bit because we don't have as many public hearings, but we've got a lot of second readings of those ordinances to come.
All right, Travis, appreciate the time as always. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Travis Goedken, City Manager of Decorah. Having a conversation with Decorah School Superintendent Tim Cronin, our monthly conversation. Of course, a lot of things to talk about. First of all, Something a lot of people have been talking about. It's been in the news for quite some time. Conference realignment. Earlier this month, the Upper Iowa Conference superintendent said no to your application on an 8-1 vote. Where is this conversation at right now? What are the options that you're considering at this time?
Well, that wasn't a huge surprise. Obviously, the Upper Iowa Conference had that vote. We kind of suspected that's what the vote was going to be. So moving forward, we'll look at we can apply to mediation and ask the Department of Ed to mediate your rejection from the conference. At that point in time, we would present reasons why we think we're a fit for the Upper Iowa. What's probably unique about Decorah, of course, is if we don't get into the Upper Iowa, we don't have a conference a year from now. And as we've talked about before, that is part of Iowa code that everybody's guaranteed to be in a conference. And so where you would go from there, with the Northeast Iowa kind of not being solvent after next year, what the options are for that. So I can't speak for the board, but I know we did have a nice hour-long meeting on January 31st that you can go back and listen, where we kind of talked about and speculated some stuff. But I assume we'll be filing mediation with Thomas Mays or whoever at the Department of Ed, and going through the process of explaining how, the travel distance for the Upper Iowa Conference. I don't have it memorized, but I think it's around 30 miles. And the nearest other conference that might, of course, I've heard the WAMAC that has schools our size, of course, but the average travel for that is 101 miles, I believe, with the closest being Independence. So obviously, one of the criteria in that Iowa code is travel distance or something in there. So, but yeah, I think we're probably looking at mediation. We'll have the board formally vote on that in an upcoming meeting and start that process.
So from a process perspective, mediation is not something that you can do just as an administration. That needs board action for that step to take place.
Yeah, we'll send a letter off to the state that'll be signed by the board president and indicate that we're requesting it as a school board. Despite what people might think, the superintendent does not have power to do everything, and we do require board approval, entering into contracts and filing stuff like that. So just kind of, and I'm not trying to be facetious there. I think sometimes people just think I can, like I always tell principals, like we don't even hire people. What we do is we recommend their hiring to the board. So as a procedure, as part of the process, we'll work with the board on that. And like I said, we kind of have talked through what happens when we get, if we would get rejected by the Upper Iowa, that mediation would be the next step. So I fully anticipate that's what we will do.
And any guess on a potential timetable when that could possibly happen, or is that as unfair of a question as I could ask you?
Yeah, it really is up to, I mean, you've got to get somebody from the Department of Ed, and then they usually have the director from the Boys Association or the Girls Union. And of course, the Girls Union maybe hired a new person last night. I know they had interviews. So those three people have to get their schedules lined up, and then you have to get a schedule for representation for Decorah and I guess the Upper Iowa schools to be in a room together. So yeah, I just don't think that it'll be as soon as we would like it to be.
All right. Another issue that's in the forefront of people's minds right now is a potential bond if referendum this November. Earlier this month at the board meeting, I believe you hired a construction manager. Where is that overall process at?
So we talked about hiring a construction manager at risk at the last meeting. We're still working through that. That would be another layer to the process that the board is considering. Some advantages for Decorah if we go down that route. The construction manager at risk takes on the risk of the costs. They're able to work with the architect and be more precise with maybe some of the drawings, and maybe they do some of the, you know, if corners need to be cut or we need to shave some price off of the project, they do it in the drawing phase before it goes out to bid, because they're kind of the experts on where the bids will come in at. And they're also actively recruiting bidders to do that. But we haven't decided on the construction manager at risk. We're still having that debate. The process is we're working with a facilities committee, and the facilities committee is going to review survey results. So we started a survey last week. And I got the postcard in my mailbox 2 days ago to kind of remind me to take the survey with a little QR code. When you get to the survey, usually we're working with the Donovan group and talking to their representatives. One thing that happens in a lot of committees is the facility committee gets together and they think they want to build a new elementary school, but they were kind of review the state of all their buildings, and then they make a recommendation to the board that says, hey, we want to build a new elementary school. Well, when we talked about that process with our facility committee, that seemed like we were going to go back in time about 15 years because a new elementary school has been recommended to the board multiple times. And so part of what makes Decorah unique is this is not a new idea. We know why we need a new building because John Klein is in rough shape. We know we've recommended a new school. We know where it will be because the board has invested in buying the rest of the Hively Island. So we're just kind of fine tuning the what part of that. And that'll be the recommendation to the board on, the recommendation to the board isn't going to be to build a new elementary school because that recommendation's been made a bunch of times before, actually. It'll be more along the lines of what can we afford and what should the new elementary school look like? And how does that process go on?
And that survey that you're asking community residents to take, what are the questions? What are they being asked to give their 2 cents on?
So thanks. So the survey was a little different this time from the Donovan Group perspective. So instead of asking like prioritize what you think the needs are, that work's already kind of been done. So this was a little bit more on, just kind of asking people more open-ended questions about what they would like to see in a project, what concerns they have, what questions they have. And there's also in the survey, there's a lot of information. It's not just a survey that we're getting information. If you take the survey and you read the questions, you can see all the steps that the board has taken in the past, when facility committees in the past or shareholders committees, or when they hired the architect firm to give an evaluation of the buildings, when all that information is in the survey. So you can see, oh yeah, what was it, 2007, they recommended a new John Klein building. So that probably will validate all the people that I've heard in town that say things like, we've been waiting for this for a long time. Or I thought my child was going to get to go to a new elementary school and they just graduated from college. So just understand it's a little different survey and there's some information that you can get. We're going to have a website that's going to also be a host of information will roll out soon. We're working on some frequently asked questions because, I know people have different thoughts and maybe want to ask, well, why don't you do it here? Or, whatever questions we get, we can put in a frequently asked question. But it's just a part of a process of having an opportunity for people to give some input, knowing that a lot of things have been decided and we didn't want to insult anybody's intelligence by having a box like, do you think we need a new elementary school? Because clearly the board's already decided that and that's been a priority. So it's a little different survey. I can tell you good news. When I talk to the consultants, and they do this all over the state with schools, this kind of information, I said, well, what should we expect for responses in a survey? And he said, well, community your size, you probably get 200, 300 would be really good. 400 would be incredible. But if you don't get 200 people to respond, you probably, you should be concerned because there's some, if nobody will even take time to do a survey, that's a lot of apathy. I think we were over the 400 mark, like day 2. And so we haven't even sent the postcards out. So it's great that people are taking the opportunity to give feedback. And I don't want to say we're going to set a record, but it doesn't surprise me because I know a lot of people have thoughts and want to share that, and this community is good about that.
And is there a deadline to give your 2 cents?
Yeah, I think the deadline is about April 20th. So we're closing on that. We wanted to have it so that we could have the data for next week's facilities committee meeting.
And what, after you collect that data and get this information, what's the next step that the facilities committee is going to discuss?
Yeah, so the facilities committee, then we're going to look at, okay, we know what we were allowed to borrow. We know what people have said that they want to see in the facility, and then kind of make a general recommendation to the board. You know, it's going to start with build an elementary school, but it's what comes after that that's going to be the facility committee work, is what can we afford to do to the elementary facility, and what do we want that to look like? Understanding that I think the committee is going to either say tax neutral or increase taxes. Tax neutral, we may not be able to build as big a school, but if we in the sense that we need to get something started there, I think that's probably where we'll go. But we look at data this month, and then next month we get ready to make a recommendation, and we probably make a recommendation to the board in June.
And that would still put you in line to put it before voters in November.
Absolutely. Though we get it. That gives the board an opportunity to vote on a agenda item that says put this on the bond issue. At the same time, we'll still be communicating with people with information about the facility. One thing that's probably people need to understand is we're not going to have plans for every single classroom and super detailed, just because there will be a little bit of flexibility. And that was one of the things that was recommended with the Donovan group was, if you say, you're going to have a chairlift that takes the kids from the, up to, the top side of State Street or something. And then you don't deliver on that, then they're mad because it was like, no, that was what was in the drawing. So in general, we'll talk more. We won't be micro specific on what the classrooms will look like, but we'll have a plan that will say, a pre-K through 2 building, this many sections, cafeteria of this size, gym of this size, kind of things.
And earlier this week, you held a special meeting and another budget public hearing. And I know the state requires all sorts of budget public hearings now. Are we done with the 6 degrees of budget hearings, and is the budget certified?
Yeah, the budget has been approved by the board. It can be, Kathy can upload it, and we are done with our budget hearings. So, yes, that process is complete.
And related to the school portion of the property taxation, how does this year's property tax levy rate related to schools compare to last year?
Yeah, so I don't know if I don't remember, Darren, if we talked about, we set our levies anticipating a 0% SSA, which pumped up our overall levy, our tax rate, same thing, to $12.55 or 51 cents. But when the state then, we had to publish because we had to publish at a certain timeline. Later, the state came with 2.5 SSA. That actually drew our overall tax rate down to $12.31. $12.31 will be a couple, within a range, but about 4 or 5 cents lower than last year's. And we traditionally go about $12.30 to $12.40 is kind of the range we're at. So we're at the bottom of that little range.
And when you can lower that tax rate a little bit, how does that potentially affect what you can potentially put on a ballot here in November? Is there a correlation at all?
Well, the only correlation is when you're saying to people, hey, we can build this new school and it won't raise your taxes. You just have to be careful. What do you consider your taxes being raised? Some people would say, well, I only notice $1 or I notice 50 cents. If we're saying we're in a range of about 10 cents, the 12.30 to 12.40 range, that would be our goal for pass a bond issue and have a tax rate that's between 12.30 and 12.40. But there is probably a little bit of semantics there on what it actually means to how much you pay attention to your tax, and do you notice if it's 1 penny higher, 2 penny higher? At some point in time, there's a breaking point. I can tell you my experience in Central City was we had a hard cap of 1760, and we did not go you didn't even take to the board and say, hey, we were thinking about 1761 because that was over what the tax rate was supposed to be. But overall, in general, I think most people hopefully will understand that our tax rate, and even in the past, has fluctuated in that dime range of 1230 to 1240.
And that's the three main issues I wanted to touch on with you, Tim. Anything else that comes to the top of your mind, as long as you got the forum?
As long as you got the forum, a lot of stuff going on with the end of the year. I can tell you that specifically district-wise, we're looking at working on the middle school project. We've got another special board meeting coming up with that to approve bids for that. We're going to get that middle school roof taken care of this year, so that will be a good thing for that building. We're working on teacher negotiations. We've got the pleasant problem of having extra funding from the state to help set minimum teacher salaries at $47,500 and 12-year veteran teacher salaries at $60,000. And having great discussions with our association, because that's year one. And then year two, there's a minimum salary bumps back up even more to 50,000, and the 12-year bumps up to 62. So it's great that the state's giving us money. It does create some people who get some really big, massive, well-deserved raise, and then other people who maybe not get as much of a raise. And so we're just kind of trying to work with our association on what's the best thing for staff and the best thing for the district. But I'd rather have that problem than not have the money. So I'll deal with those headaches or potential challenges.
And related to that funding that the state approved for teacher pay, is that separate from the state supplemental aid?
Well, it's separate from state supplemental aid. It's actually, it increases your teacher's salary supplement, which is your TSS. Now, your TSS is, so our number goes, oh boy, I'm going to wish I knew this. So maybe our number goes from about 650 up to 950 now, because the state has figured out that's how much money we need to get to the minimum salaries up. But now we're at the 950. That number grows in correlation to the SSA number.
Okay.
So if it's 3% next year, that 950 will go up 3% instead of being that 600. So it's built into the funding formula. I know I was talking to someone last night who was anxious that it was a one-year thing. This is not one-year money. This is built into our funding formula. So you can never say it won't happen, but when it's built into the formula, it automatically goes up. So they'd have to do a dramatic to take this out.
All right, Tim, we appreciate your time and the updates as usual. Look forward to talking to you in the month of May with obviously a lot of things going on in education in that month. Thanks for the time as always. And as you very well agree, always go Cubs, right?
Yeah, sure. Sounds good. Thanks, Darren.
Tim Cronin, Decorah School Superintendent. Having a conversation now with the new head football coach at Decorah High School, Mike Tangen. And Mike, the announcement was made yesterday, and when you look at where you've come from and where you're at right now, obviously a Decorah High School graduate, you've been on the faculty at Decorah High School and in the football program for quite some time. Is this kind of a life coming full circle moment for you?
Well, actually, yeah. I mean, I guess if you had asked me 10, 15 years ago if I'd be the head football coach, I actually probably would have said no. I probably would have been the head baseball coach. That was kind of a dream of mine for a long time. And I coached baseball in Decorah forever. And one of my biggest idols was Coach O and just the way that he coached me. And then just kind of stepped away from baseball and developed a passion for football. And kind of this is something that has just kind of turned into a passion of mine, and kind of where I saw myself fitting in is and fitting into the school and what I feel like I can bring to the table. And football is something that's really, really been a fun thing for me, and something that I really am excited about.
Being the fact you've been in this program for 9 years, will the transition be a pretty easy one in your mind?
I think so. I mean, obviously, I think with any new head coach, there's going to be some differences, but one of the things for me is, I mean, this is my home. This is where I've grown up. So I think a lot of the core values I think will still be the same, but I think every coach needs to kind of coach to their personality and be truthful to who they are as a person. And because that's the only way you can lead a group, in my opinion, is to be yourself and, you know, be authentic that way. So, I think it'll be a seamless transition. I'm excited about the guys that I think we'll be working with, and, it should be fun.
What is that Mike Tangen personality that you will coach to?
That's a good question. You know, if you've ever seen me coach, I'm kind of an energetic guy. I'm very competitive. It's just kind of the way I was raised, and the people that I looked up to when I saw in sports. And you know, I was involved in a lot of different sports, so I just developed a competitiveness to me, and a passion for sports. So you'll see a little bit of that. I think I mean, obviously things that, you know, that you push always is, you know, toughness and being physical and all that type of thing. But I also think there's a fun creative side that can be done to this game. And I like explosive things. If you watched us play in high school, we were a fast group. I like speed. I'm a speed guy. So, you know, doing things that can be a little bit fun and explosive that way too is kind of exciting.
As for the structure of the rest of your staff, do you expect a lot of changes at all there, or is that pretty much in place and kind of turnkey as you take over the keys to this program?
Yeah, I think there's some things that are in place. There's going to be some. We're losing a couple coaches, so you know, just adding some additions to the staff. But I think restructuring just some of the people that are already here and giving them the roles and that where I see that can kind of best suit each other, put them in positions for their strengths, and then just turn them loose. Because that's one thing that I've really enjoyed about coaching at Decorah is, you know, when I got the keys to the defense, it was the keys to the defense. And Coach Truman put so much trust in me to be able to kind of do my thing, and that's what I want to do for them. So, you know, as far as like personnel and all that, I think it'll be very similar to the people that have been on there. It'll be just maybe some different roles for them.
And when you look at the overall coaching career you've had, I know you really started coaching even when you were back going through college, coaching baseball in the summertime and coaching a lot of sports. How are you a better coach now than when you started quite a long time ago now?
I'm yeah, I think the older you get, and I mean, I'm not going to say that I'm old or anything, but you know, the older you get and the longer you coach, your best coaching is always in front of you. You learn so much as you go, and how I coached 10, 15 years ago is way different than I coach now. Obviously I'm still passionate. I'm still excited, but you know, I think that there is a growth that definitely takes place. And, you know, you know, and the people that know me, I mean, I've basically been in Decorah my whole life, but I've had a lot of different experiences with a lot of different coaches in my own personal athletic career, and then coaching as well. You know, some of the things I learned from Coach Hafner, just the short time that I was with him. If anybody knows Coach Aaron Hafner, I learned so much from him in a year being there that kind of really shaped me, and some of the core values that really needs to take place in order to be a good football coach, but also to be a good leader for your coaches and for your team. And so those things you just learn as you go, and you just take bits and pieces from each coach that you've had and each coach you've worked with, and you put it in your own spin on it.
And how important is it to keep learning as a coach and kind of never be satisfied with, hey, I've gotten to this level, I don't need to get any better? How important is it to keep that hunger going to make yourself better so you can turn around and make young people better?
Well, I've always thought if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. Once you think you know everything, that's when you don't. And that's probably something that you learn with age. You know, when you first come out, you kind of, it's like, this is the way it's got to be. You know, this is what worked for me, so this is the way. And you know, the longer that you do it, the more you realize there's so much out there. I mean, I look at the strength and conditioning world that I've been able to be involved in here, and just how much that's changed over the last 5-6 years since I've gotten that going. And you just have to be adapting all the time. I mean, there's so many resources out there. There's so many different ways to do things. And once you think, you know, you really don't. And you would be selling yourself short if you didn't continue to work hard. And obviously that's what I'll be stressing to even our kids. It's like, it doesn't matter how good you are. There's always somebody out there better than you. There's always somebody out there that works just as hard or harder than you, you know, so you got to keep growing.
And you mentioned the strength and conditioning that you have been a part of. How active will you remain in that role with your new added duties as head football coach?
Yeah, I think, well, to your point there too, I'm coaching the girls track team right now, and I love doing that, and I think that's part of our duty, at a school, especially this size, is to be involved in as many things as possible. Strength and conditioning is a huge thing in football. It's a huge thing in every sport. I train everybody to be athletes and not necessarily just about size and all that. So I'll still be pretty heavily involved in the strength and conditioning world. And my hope is that someday I can maybe turn that over a little bit to somebody that would be, qualified to do so. But I'll always be teaching my classes, during the school day. It'll be just some summertime stuff that could maybe free me up to do some other things football related. But I'm not a huge big thing in doing a bunch of odysseys and football specific stuff either. I still think good, consistent training and kids playing multiple sports is going to be my push.
And obviously, everyone wants to be successful. Everyone wants to have those victories on Friday nights or those victories on the track here in the spring with you guys and in any sport. But high school sports are a lot bigger picture than that, as you very well know. Where does high school activities, high school sports, high school football fit in the overall development in education-based athletics?
Well, to be honest, I think the reason why I got into this profession is because I really wanted to help young people. And I developed a passion for being active and lifting weights and strength and conditioning and that type of thing. And then I also developed a passion for coaching and sports. And so my way of teaching people about life is through what I do. And is through strength and conditioning, through the weight room, through sports. I mean, that's what we're here for, and that's what we need to do. And so, yes, I want to win a bunch of games, but honestly, I want to create good human beings. I want to create great dads, great workers, great sons. That's why we're here. And that's the reason why we do what we do, and to give them the best experience possible, but to teach them things along the way. And it's not always going to be, I'm going to teach these kids like I teach my own kids. I love them when they need to be loved, and I'm also going to get after them when they need to be gotten after. So, that's the type of relationship that I want to have with the players. And, that's important to me.
How did you develop over time that passion for coaching and that passion for helping young people?
You talk about how early I started coaching. So when I was in 9th grade, I started coaching park and rec baseball. And it's just, honestly, I don't know what it is. Some people find those things early. Coaching and teaching just always come natural to me. Just like any coach and teacher, you're not for everybody. That's why I think it's so important to be coached by so many different people and played multiple things and do as many things as possible. But yeah, I think those things are all super important.
And as you look at this group that you'll be coaching on the field this year, you got to be pretty excited about the mix of kids you got coming back, I'd imagine. Is that fair to say?
Oh, yeah, I'm excited about it. The thing that really gets me excited is not necessarily, yes, I think that we have a lot of talent and things, but what's really been fun is the kids have done a great job in training so far. And I think the cohesiveness in our group's been fantastic. There's always, every year there's always more kids that you'd like to be, working out and doing, maybe another sport or this and that. But when you have a good nucleus of people that are doing those things, that's important. So I think the process more than anything is what I've been seeing has just it's been fun to watch. We got guys that they want to work hard, that sports are important to them, not just football. Being involved, being active is important. And, I'll take our guys when they have that mindset over talent any day. And we do have some talent coming back, which is exciting.
All right, Mike, we appreciate you taking some time talking about your new head football coaching position as a young man who played in probably as many games as I got to cover as possible back in the day. I'm happy to see this turnaround. I'm happy to see you're still giving back to young people because obviously you're very talented about that. Congrats on the new position, and I look forward to working with you come the fall.
Thanks, Darren. I appreciate it, man.
Mike Tangen, the new head football coach at Decorah High School. Thank you to our guest on the program this morning, Mandy Groth and Fallon Cassidy from the Winneshiek County Sheriff's Office and the Decorah Police Department. And they talked to us about April being Sexual Abuse Awareness Month. I want to thank Decorah City Manager Travis Goedken, Decorah School Superintendent Tim Cronin, and new Decorah High School football coach Mike Tangen for joining us on the program this morning. Don't forget, we put these shows on YouTube each and every week. We realize you're busy, can't always be near a radio or a smart speaker or an internet streaming device at 9 o'clock on a Thursday morning, but we get to talk to interesting people talking about interesting things in our community, and we want to bring you those conversations on your schedule. And this is the way to figure it out. If you're out on YouTube, 4-18 Our Town program, it's a great way to check it out. We also put these links on all of our Facebook pages as well. Another way we do our best to keep in touch with the communities here at LA Communication Radio Stations. Thank you to our guests. Thank you to our sponsor, Decorah Bank and Trust. And we thank you, that's right, you, for tuning in, for logging on, or for watching Our Town on 94.9 and 99.1 The River.